Welcome to my weekly review. Today is Saturday, July 12th, and you're looking at a weekly chart of the Nasdaq, which fell 16 points last week, or 0.08% on 7% above the average volume. But don't really care about the volume here. We're just looking at this V-shaped recovery, the Nasdaq making new highs. You see the golden cross as the faster term moving averages cross above the slower term or longer term. But you can see if you look at this rally since the April 7th, Liberation Day or whatever, we've only had, 4 weeks. One, two, three. Last one was June 13th, and now four where it's pulled back a little bit. And those proved to be, opportunities. It looks like it's just digesting gains here. It's had a massive run. Like I said, it traded at a high 20,655 last week. The prior week was 624. So it did make a higher high. And if I look at the daily chart, you could probably see it a little better here. Here's your V-shaped recovery after a 27% bear market from December 16th to April 7th. We've rallied to make new highs. There's your prior week's high, 20,624 on July 3rd. Remember, that was a short week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the half day Thursday, and then we're off for the 4th of July celebration. Last week we had a full week, made that high on the 10th, which was Thursday, 20,655. Just give a little bit back yesterday, what, 45 points or 0.22%. Anyway, it's a weekly review, so I'm going to be looking at weekly charts here. And, the NASDAQ, well, like I said, make a new high, pull back, digesting gains, only down 16 points. And if I want to take a look at the S&P 500 index, just going to go through these two indexes. Pretty much the same thing, down 19 points, 0.31%. Just, that one did not make a new high. The prior week was 6,284. Oh, yeah, it did. Hello. 6,284, 6,290. So 290 is more than 684. It doesn't look like it, though. It looks like an inside week, but oh well. Anyway, just like same thing here, only the, digesting gains. This is the fifth week that it's kind of paused, but still on the uptrend. We're in a strong uptrend. That's the main theme. And during this uptrend, we've seen many themes working, including, AI, of course, the hardware, NVIDIA software, Palantir, Oracle, energy, data centers, fintech, drones, cryptocurrency, anything in space, aerospace, and defense. I'm going to go through a lot of that stuff. But I'm going to start with the Mag 7 for some reason. There's three names that are really sticking out to me in the Magnificent Seven, and Meta Platforms is one of them. You could see it had this, cup with handle pattern is broken out, just flat last week, kind of like the index. Just digesting gains. I think that's healthy. Longer term, it's a little bit of a rotation we saw last week. Cannot deny that. Microsoft pretty much flat on the week, up, less than 1%. Looks like a 3 weeks tight area here on the Microsoft. Gosh, it doesn't look like it. The last 495, 498, 503. Okay. Pattern Rex picking that up. But Meta, Microsoft, and of course NVIDIA, is the first $4 trillion company. You can see it here, the market cap, and financial news media makes a big deal about it. But, if you're holding the stock, it's performing well, just breaking out from this consolidation. And it's been a long time. It was 140 on a June of 2024. So it's been a year and now it's starting to move out. And for a stock like that, with that much supply, you can see how much supply for it to move. It takes a ton of demand to move that supply. So a lot of institutions, want to own NVIDIA. So those three are, to me, the outstanding ones. Apple still struggling here. I think they're getting, left behind. I think it's pretty clear that in the AI race, there's some winners and some losers. I think, Apple's kind of lagging in that area, and that's why the stock is suffering. Google, this is one that I really like. The setup here, 3 weeks tight. Let's take a look at this on the daily. I'm going to put this one on my Reddit list. Nice cup with handle pattern here, trading tight within the base, near its moving average. It was up, 1.5% on Friday, so I should have bought it Friday, but I didn't. Story of my life. But still looks good here. Yeah, on the daily chart. It is a weekly review, so I'll switch back to the weekly. And then Amazon, they had their Prime Day last week, and of course Bezos is selling stock, and that's why it makes the news. Once again, a 3 weeks tight pattern here for Amazon, so that could be an add-on buy point here if you own it already, or if you don't. Yeah, 3 weeks. Gosh, it doesn't look like 3 weeks tight. What are the closes here? As you can tell, I haven't been looking at these stocks. 223, 223, 225. Okay. So pattern rec doesn't lie. Our friends at Market Surge, they're on it. All right. And the last one I guess I'll cover is Tesla. Kind of a cult stock consolidating in a base. CEO, took a foray into politics, and you know what I feel about politics. So, I wouldn't touch Tesla. It's an avoid for me. All right. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to get back to reviewing last week's business. And we started off the week with Core Scientific being bought out by CoreWeave. And, these two have been partners for a long time, but it was a 30, excuse me, it was a $9 billion acquisition. And you can see the market cap of Core Scientific now is 3.7 billion. So that's telling you that they don't think CoreWeave stock is worth much. It's certainly not what it currently is. And CoreWeave bought Core Scientific, like I said, for 9 billion in stock. That stock was down 31% last week on an acquisition news. This is something crazy that I haven't seen. I don't know if I've ever seen this, a company being acquired, selling off like this. And yeah, it's just kind of rare. CoreWeave is down, and gosh, 9% on Friday, 24%. Usually the acquiring company, suffers a little bit for a day or two. But man, this thing is just falling out a bed here, down 24% last week. So yeah, to me, those are both an avoid. And when it becomes that difficult, just stay away. All right, VRNA, this is Verona Pharma, and they got bought out by Merck, and a lot of the shareholders thought it was too cheap of a deal. I believe it was a 10 billion deal, and the market cap right now is 8.9. I'm not sure why it's not 10, but maybe a bidder will come in or something. Who knows? Until the deal's done, it's not a done deal. How about that? To be profound. Anyway, this one's going to be on our relative strength list for a while until the deal's done. And yeah, but it's going to be flatlining here right there around 105. It was up of, yeah, premium 14%. The shareholders wanted Verona to just go alone because their sales are ramping, but you can't complain with a 14% buyout and just, sell your stock and move on. If you're a trader, if you're a shareholder and then I guess you just hold on to it. But anyway, the drug stocks perked up a little bit last week. We saw some rotation into some oil and housing and airlines and gold and crypto and to drugs. It's been a long time since the drug industry has done anything. And last week we saw some rotation as we had some stocks being sold, winners being sold to buy laggards. And I went through that in a prior video. I'm not going to do it again. But this is Mink Therapeutics. INKT is a ticker symbol. It reminded me of Ink to me back in the day, the 90s. It was a go-go stock, Ink to me, and Yahoo bought them in 2002. But Mink Therapeutics took the ticker symbol INKT, and they had a phase two trial for what was it, testicular cancer, I believe it was. I better get my facts straight. I'll get back to you on that. Anyway, yeah, a nice 787% move on Friday. If you pick some of that up, let's take a look at a 5 minute chart. That thing just ramped all day long. I don't know if that's short covering or what. Yeah, 41% short. So short's got to get out of there on news like that. And you can see the big move, flatlining for a long, long time. Then all of a sudden, good news comes in, and the biotech shareholders are in the penthouse with this one. A lot of them are in the outhouse, though. It's been a rough go for drug stocks. All right, I mentioned all the winners, the drones, the crypto, the aerospace, anything that flies, AI, energy, data centers, fintech, and gold. But I'm not going to get to those. I'm going to get to some of these oil and gas stocks, which perked up last week. I mean, Chevron was up, nearly 5%. So you saw some rotation. This is literally, like the first week of the third quarter, because last week was just an abbreviated week after the holiday. And so they come in on Monday, sell the winners, then buy, oil and gas stocks. There's no denying it. This looks like a bottom here on Chevron. Let's take a look at a daily chart. Yeah, 132 is a low. It retests there at 133 and holds. And now it's, 155. ExxonMobil, the same thing. It's got that low 97, kind of a retest. And now it's at 115. Let's take a look at the weekly here. This is a weekly review. Still consolidating within a base, and it looks like that's all it does is consolidate in a base, but it pays healthy dividend. A couple other oil and gas stocks that I like is Tidewater. This one's been beaten down, as you can see, but it looks like it made that bottom there on the Liberation Week of 31, now closed up $52. It was up nearly 10% last week. So, yeah, I mean, I know people don't like to buy oil and gas stocks, and I know they're inflationary, but this one looks like it might want to break out of this little consolidation here and make a move, back above 60. I'm trying to be open-minded, I'm just trying to make money in stocks. I don't really, I don't make the rules here. I'm just kind of observing what's happening here in the market. Weatherford International, this is a machinery, equipment, oil and gas. Definitely made a bottom here, during the Liberation Week, April 7th week, like a lot of stocks, right? What was the low here? 36.99. 36.74, close at 58. So those two look good to me. Once again, breaking out of a stage one base maybe and gets into that advanced phase there above $60. That's Weatherford. And then VG, this is a new issue, sold off hard and now rebounded last week up 15%. Thank you very much. And yeah, above 1950 or 20 bucks, maybe that will be an area of interest as well. But you got to just acknowledge what's going on in the market. And then we saw some rotation into oil and gas stocks last week, no doubt about it. All right, I'm going to move on from oil and gas because I know a lot of people are not interested. But the housing market, this looks like a rounding bottom, a classic, low here on April 7th, of course. The week was April 11th, a low of 88. This is Pulte Homes. Now it's 114. Let's take a look at the daily chart here in Pulte. Made that low of 88. A little bit of a retest support. Now above the 200. DR Horton. Yeah, that looks good too. 110 was the low. That was your chance. It's below the 200. I know a lot of people don't like to buy below the 200, but it looks good to me. It just looks like these housing stocks are bottoming. Stocks top when the fundamentals are great and they look their best and everybody's saying great things about them. And they also bottom when things look their worst. And they've been delivering some pretty stinker reports, but they're not going down anymore. And so, everybody hates them. Their interest rates are too high, blah, blah, blah. And these things aren't going down anymore. This is KB. They just reported a, lousy quarter, but the stock didn't go down any further. I think, that 48.90, the retest there at 49.95, and this thing closed Friday at 55.60. So the housing market to me has bottomed. If you like buying, bottoms, there's a 3 weeks tight at the bottom here of 5 weeks tight, 3 weeks tight, then 5 weeks tight. So that's a long time of, rounding out at a bottom. This is MHO, MI Homes, 121. It closed that Friday. That low was 100, so 20% off the lows. And you can see the group, it's not a 176 out of 197 weak group, but like I said, there's rotation coming into these, and we can see this. They're making their bottoms. If you like buying stocks like this, here's another 5 weeks tight on Meritage Homes And then Dreamfinder, DFH. This one looks like it's ahead of the others on the weekly, and certainly on the daily, you're going to see that's above the longer term moving average. That black line there is your 200. And I would say 2677 there was, buy area. You could say 2480 was if you like buying below the 200. 2677 right here above the 200. It just depends, if you don't like buying bottoms, you're not comfortable. That's fine. You got to have your own style, your own personality, your own tolerance for what you can handle. This is going to require patience. I don't think these are going to go straight to new highs, but I think they've bottomed. I did mention earlier we got some love in some drug stocks. Rhythm Pharmaceuticals had the good news from a phase 2 trial. Broke out of a base here, man. That looks beautiful on the weekly chart, up 32% last week. So, and then I mentioned VRNA, which was a buyout, which is always nice. And then INKT, up, massively last week. So we did get some love, for a couple of days in the drug stocks. Merck bought out Verona, and that thing was actually up on the news of an acquisition. So Wall Street's applauding Merck for, taking the bazooka out and spending 10 billion on a company and buying some growth. And the stock was up 3% last week, and that looks like it may have bottomed. And that's a component of your what IBB, XBI, or whatever. The drug stocks have been hammered for a long time, and maybe they make a comeback here. I'm not going to predict that though. They've been just beaten down for a long, long time. I'm just observing. I'm not predicting. All right, last week we got instead of listening to, tariffs and interest rates and Powell and bond yields and blah, 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 yada, yada, we got some earnings news. And I think the market's starving for earnings news. Earnings, and liquidity, of course, but earnings drive stock prices higher and lower. But if you're taking market share and having good reports, you get a nice 11% bump. And that's what we saw in Delta Airlines last week. At the prior quarter, they gave a pretty negative, gloomy outlook, and so they had a little, better than expected report. And the stock jumped on that news, and it also catapulted some of these other, what I call pen action. And United Airlines up 6.5%, American Airlines up 4%, ALK Alaska up 3%, and then Southwest, which has Elliott Management at the helm now. And this one looks like it's breaking out of a base here, up 9% last week. They're at $37. A little extended from its moving averages right now on that move higher. Little inside day on Friday, but Southwest looks good. And every time Elliott gets involved in a company, they straighten stuff out. I've owned several companies where Elliott came in, and yeah, the stock appreciated because they clean house. They see things that management doesn't see. They fix things. They're willing to fire people and get leaner and meaner. So Elliott is good for business. All right, so that was good to see the earnings news help the airline stocks, and not only the airline stocks, also the cruise lines benefited from, there's a lot of benefit from the Delta Airlines report. Royal was up, last week while the Nasdaq was down. Carnival, yeah, it was Vikings one I wanted to show. Yeah, Viking was up nearly 2%. Let's see that on the daily. Yeah, they got some pin action on that news. Viking looks fantastic, breaking out over the cup of the handle there. That one looks good. And then some of the hotel stocks. Hilton got a little bounce. It was up 1.5% last week, while the Nasdaq was down fractionally. But yeah, these are outperforming on that just one earnings report, man. That tells me, yeah, the market's starving for earnings, and we're going to get some. I'm going to get to that a little later. Um, the last group that I wanted to cover, the last two groups, I guess you could say gold. And this gold is one of the top performing groups in 2025. I know a lot of people don't like to buy oil and gas or gold. They're commodities. They're inflationary, but I'm just acknowledging strength. This one is a top performing gold stock in 2025, Anglo Gold Ashanti. And it was up last week while the market was down a little bit. Then Wheaton is another one that was up, 0.5%, but still consolidating within a base. Looks pretty darn good. All right. The last group that I wanted to cover, a couple that were on my ready list last week. One was Mara. It was up 8%. The cryptocurrency stocks were up a lot. Bitcoin was up, to 118. Now I think it's at 117 this weekend, but still a big move for that cryptocurrency group. Morrow is one. MicroStrategy was another one I had on the Reddit list. And to me, it was up 7.5% last week. But on the daily chart, it still looks pretty nice in this base here, near that 430 area of interest. So those ones look good. And of course, I can't go too long without mentioning Robinhood, one of my top holdings. And somebody texted me or sent me a DM saying that it hasn't been below the 10 since. I have it on the 5 here because that's what leading stocks usually bounce off the 5. It hasn't been down to the 10 since May, so I think it'll probably do that this week. But Robinhood is one, and Coinbase has been, on fire. They got included into the S&P 500, and it's been smoking ever since. And so those, there's a lot of other plays in this group. The data centers and miners. This is IREN, CIFR is another one. There's a lot of them that are doing well. I should be showing you the weekly because, the little profit taking on Friday. Well, that was down 3% last week. So much for riding with the price of Bitcoin, huh? Maybe you think I should check this out before I make a video. All right. All right. I just wanted to acknowledge some of the rotation here. I'm going to get away from themes and kind of throw a change up. And recently, I mentioned rotation and some of these stocks that were in my relative strength screening, which had big runs for a long, long time. This is Dave. This is a fixture in our relative strength, trading above the 5, the 21 for a long, long time. Pulled back, one once below the 21 and then rallied up. I mean, this thing went from what 65 to what 286. That's a big move, folks. And now pull back to the 50. So I'm interested to see what Dave does next week. You can see right here the volume here the last 5 days just sold off hard last week. Same with SEZL. These are some of the stocks that had been ripping, and then I'm getting a lot of DMs like, what's wrong with this stock? Well, this is what happens. When you get a momentum stock, there's momentum to the upside and there's momentum to the downside, right? And I make fun because people say, "Oh, this is risky stock." Well, it was risky on the way up too. All stocks contain risk. It's just this is surfing its moving average. It was risky, but it was making us money. And now, I mean, to me, I can't tolerate stuff like that. I would be out of that completely. But I'm looking to see where these find support, and that's my point here. We see some rotation out of this stuff, out of these hot stocks. I mean, this AEVA barely has any sales, right? But this thing was motoring from $2 up to what, 38, something like that. Yeah. So what is that, a 19 bagger, something like that? Anyway, when stock's that hot, you got to expect some profit taking. We saw some rotation here in the first 10 days, 11 days of July, the third quarter. We're seeing a shift, and you have to acknowledge these shifts. Otherwise, you're going to get hammered for a 20% loss last week. Nobody wants to take that. So recognize the shift, recognize the rotation. They got to be in compliance. A lot of these funds need to be in compliance. They have to sell their winners and buy stocks they might not like. They might not want to buy, but they have to buy it. How long will it last? I don't know. And if somebody tells you they do, yeah, they're probably fibbing a little bit. Circle, another one that was on my relative strength list, a fixture for a long time. Look what happened. It got up near 300 and just sold off. Closed Friday at 187. CoreWeave, I mentioned earlier, it's just, yeah, no, thank you. Okay, so those are the ones that were hot. Now we're seeing some rotation out of them. They're pulling back, and now I'm seeing some new stocks join in the relative strength list. This is Tapestry, which is Coach Kate Spade handbag company. They were going to buy Michael Kors or Capri, Jimmy Choo, and Dr. No nixed the deal. And ever since she said no, which is what she does, the stock has been really strong. So Wall Street's applauding a Coach or Tapestry for not buying Capri. So that's it doesn't have a ton of growth here, single digit sales growth, but Wall Street's buying it. And like I said, I'm just observing here. I don't own this. I'm not in no position. I'm just observing strength. This is what's showing up on my relative strength scan. FUTU Holdings, this is a, I know people would rather own SOFI or a Robinhood, but FUTU has been, really strong stock showing up on our screens here. Last week it was up 23%. I think we'll all take that in our portfolios. 23% week will help you considerably. You can see it's got a heavy short interest and stocks trading higher. And I'm just observing here. Like I said, I don't own it. I mentioned SoFi earlier, closed at 21.20. Nice, 14% last week. Let's take a look at that on the daily. You can see it on, just surfing the five here. Little extended, 4.4% above the five, but just another strong stock. And buy high, sell higher. This one surprised me. Solar Edge. Yeah, this one keeps showing up here. It's above the 10, above the 21, showing relative strength. Down 7% on Friday, down 7% for the week. So we'll see if that one remains. What other ones do we have here? Oh, Bloom Energy was upgraded, I believe, at Goldman Sachs last week, consolidating within a base. I like this one. I like the energy group has been super strong. Uh, you know, GEV is the one I own, and I just bought LEU last week. That one was on our Ready list as well. This has been a fixture here. And yeah, I mean, it was at 211 and it pulled back to 151. Yikes. This is what I'm saying during pullbacks. You want to find out where your stock finds support. And I would say it definitely found support here at the 21. So when we have pullbacks, you talk about, you hear about people, buy the dip. This is what they're talking about. You get a dip and then you buy the bounce off the dip here. So it was 151. 2 days later, it's 184. I would say that's a bounce. Now it just went sideways for, 4, 5, 6 sessions. And then last week, bounced again up 17.5%. I did have that one on the ready list last week. Yay. As it, yeah, bounced off its moving average there. You know, this is the strongest stock in the strongest group. So that one remains. Bloom Energy, I showed you that one. Oh, here we go. This is one nobody's going to like. PARR, oil and gas refiner. I don't know what's going on here. Yeah, but this one broke out of a base and has just been a monster. From $12 to 35, that's a three bagger here. Par Pacific Holdings, just the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger here. Uh, Pagaya Technologies, computer software, financial. Surfing the moving averages. This one's, as we saw Dave and SEZL kind of fizzle, this one continues higher, up to 3.5% last week, almost 4% for Pagaya, just surfing its 5 EMA. Anyway, so you got some relative strength out, you got some relative strength in, and that's it for me. Thank you for watching. At mcstockcharts.com, we never give up. I did want to show a couple things here, though, in honor of the great Steve Jobs. One more thing, we stay hungry, we stay foolish, we stay humble, as he would say. And I would just want to point out one more thing, and that's earnings week is finally here. I mentioned, that, I'm tired of hearing about tariffs. I'm tired of hearing about Jerome Powell and interest rates. I'm tired of hearing about bond yields, blah, blah, blah. The same old junk. That's why I don't watch financial TV. It just drives me nuts. My wife's got it on all day. I said, man, that stuff will rot your brain. So don't watch that stuff. Anyway, we have earnings coming up this week. I'm looking forward to the following. JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon. He's been pretty outspoken recently. We just want to hear what his business is doing. Just shut up and tell us if you're taking market share or not. And that's the great thing about earnings. If you want to have stock appreciation for a long, long time, you have to deliver solid earnings. And you can see JP Morgan's done that over the many years. You got to have earnings and sales growth, and that's what drives stock appreciation, along with liquidity. I get it. But JP Morgan reports this week, Wells Fargo. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Wells Fargo. I want to hear from the banks. I think we can have a nice rally in financials. I think they're doing pretty well. Transportation stock, JBHT, JB Hunt, they report as well. I can go to the daily chart here and see what they look like. Yeah, below the 200 reports on the 15th. ASML, equipment, monopoly. They're going to report on the 16th. Johnson and Johnson, a drug stock, they're going to have to buy some, smaller drug stocks as well. And you can see the single digit growth here, no great shakes. This is one of those dividend aristocrats, but I want to hear what they say. It's a big company, 377 billion market cap, Dow Jones um, component. United going to report, hopefully they get a bounce just like Delta. We'll see what they have to say on the 16th. TSM reports early in the morning on the 17th. Taiwan Semi, very interested to hear from them. And then you got your food package, beverage, Pepsi. They own potato chips, water, and, consumer product company. So I'm interested to hear what they have to say in regards to pricing. CTAS, this is a stock nobody talks about, but this is a proxy for the economy. You can see how this one has just been a monster for years and years and years. And if the economy is good, this thing's going to go higher. If the economy is bad, like it was in 08, 09, this thing's going to suffer. This has got your, uniforms, police, fire. They got hotel, linens, just yeah, restaurants. So it's tethered to the economy, and I want to hear what they have to say. What else do we have, Nick? Oh, Abbott Labs, yeah, another medical product. Medical Diversified, TRV, not really interested in them. Travelers, it's a Dow Jones component. They report on the 17th. And the big one everybody wants to hear from is Netflix. Pulled back here the last couple of weeks, which I like. Pulling back into earnings. You can see down 4% last week. The prior week it was down 2%. So had a nice run. It was one of the leaders out of this Liberation Day on the 7th, and then now it's pulled back to a moving average. I think that bodes well for Netflix. I think they're taking market share, and it's a well-managed company. And anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching. Seagate reports next week as well on the 17th. But everybody's looking forward to Netflix. Earnings are here, so we don't have to. We could put tariffs on the back burner and Jerome Powell and all that. The earnings needs to be the focus. This tells the story of who's taking market share, who's losing market share. Stocks will be rewarded. Stocks will be punished. I can't wait. Thank you for watching at mcstockcharts.com. We never give up.